Welcome to Political Therapy. My name is Braxton Wilhelmsen, and today I have a special guest. We have Heather Brown, who I've been a friend of for a while, and we go way back. And she's agreed to join me today and talk a little bit about her political ideals. Hi, Heather.
Hello.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself so we know who you are and kind of where you're coming from?
I'm a mom. I have 3 little girls. They're 4, 3, and 1. I homeschool them, even though they're a little bit too young for actual school. And I dabble a little bit in politics, not so much. And I try my best to get involved in local politics as much as I have the energy to.
Okay, and what kind of involvement have you had, like being a delegate or?
Yeah, delegate mostly in
Delegate.
county politics.
Cool. Well, it's good to hear that somebody's involved. I did that one time, and it was a good experience, and I especially love standing in front of real people, telling them what I thought, and having them respond. It was really,
That's important.
really exciting. Okay, well, the way that I want to begin today, I want to start off by reading you a series of statements. I have a list of statements that I'll read, and as I do, I want you to rate on a scale of 1 to 5 what your emotional response is to the idea contained in the statement. So the scale goes like this. So 1 is very negative response. A 2 is a somewhat negative response. A 3 is neutral. A 4 is somewhat positive. And a 5 is very positive response to that statement. So I'm just going to read through. And as you give me answers to these statements, I'm going to record your response. And we'll use this as a guide for the rest of our conversation. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. Number 1. America is the greatest country in the world.
4.
4. Okay, somewhat positive. Good. I was afraid they'd all be 3s, so I'm going to be really excited to hear these 1s, 2s, 4s, and 5s. Okay, number 2. Iran is building a nuclear bomb, and we have to stop them.
3.
3. Okay. Number 3. I'm going to burn an American flag.
1.
1. Oh, you don't like that, huh? Okay. When I do it, I won't invite you.
Good.
All right. Number 4. If you want to own a gun, you have to demonstrate the need for a gun.
1.
Oh, you don't like that either. Okay. Number 5. The Federal Reserve keeps our economy growing and keeps inflation down. If you're not familiar with it or you don't care about it, then you can give it 3. 2 is even better.
Well, I disagree with that statement, but it's not really something I am really
you're
excited
not passionate
about.
Okay. All right, 2. So somewhat negative. Number 6. This is going extremely well so far. All right. So the Constitution was written for the 1700s and needs to be changed with the times.
1.
Oh, okay. Looks like I've got some disagreeable notes here. Number 7, like Al-Qaeda, ISIS is a CIA creation armed and funded by the United States government.
Oh, 3.
3, don't care. Okay.
I do care, but I don't want to get into it.
Wait a second, that's not on the scale.
Yeah.
All right, that's all right. We don't have to talk about it. 8, it's good to kill and replace the leaders of other countries to promote democracy.
1.
Okay. 9, the U.S. public school system is designed to produce mindless factory workers and obedient soldiers.
Well, I kind of disagree with the statement, but I don't know.
So it doesn't. So the scale isn't necessarily whether you agree or not. It's more about how do you feel. Like if somebody were to say that to you on Facebook, how would you feel? Negative, positive, nothing? How about I'll phrase it this way. Your entire public school education was designed to make you a factory worker and a mindless obedient soldier.
Oh. 2.
2. Okay. Not a big deal. All right. 10. We need to support the troops without exception.
3.
3. How do you feel about this so far? Is this hard?
No. It's fine.
It's all right. Okay. Number 11. Obama is one of the greatest presidents of all time.
Ooh. 1.
1. Okay.
He's terrible.
All right. Number 12, 9/11 was an inside job.
3.
You don't want to get into it?
I don't know much about it, so
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah.
Then that's the right answer. What about the idea that what if someone said that was true? What about the idea that that could be true? Does that bother you at all, or do you not care? Like in the theoretical world.
It does bother me a little bit because I think it's not true, but I haven't studied both sides, so I can't really take a hard stance on
Okay.
either of them.
Okay. Number 13, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, and other mainstream news agencies are generally trustworthy.
1.
Okay. 14, politicians are mostly corrupt, dishonest, and self-serving.
5.
5. So you feel good because you agree, or you're glad that they're self-serving and they're selfish?
Oh, sorry, because I agree with this statement.
Okay.
Was that not the right way to
I don't know.
use the scale?
It's confusing, huh?
A little bit.
I might have to revise my instructions for the next shot at this, but this is really good. Okay. So I'm going to put a 5, and I know what you mean by it.
Okay.
15, the American dream is to own a home.
3.
Okay. There's not a lot of people who are really using that as a campaign slogan or
Yeah.
arguing about it, but it has interesting implications. Anyway,
Right.
number 16, Jesus said we should help the poor, or in other words, have government welfare.
2.
2. Okay.
1.5.
1.5. I'm going to write it. 1.5. All right. Okay, we're about 2/3 of the way done here. 17, things that are legal are right and things that are illegal are wrong.
1.
Oh, okay. So I don't have to obey the law? Sweet. 18, often we should sacrifice personal ethics for the greater good.
Yeah. 1.
Yeah, if you don't like that idea, then...
I don't like that idea.
Okay. I do what is right as long as it yields good results.
1.
No. Oh, okay. No. Okay. The U.S. government has given children LSD, sterilized mentally handicapped people, given mental health patients involuntary shock therapy until their memory was gone, dropped clouds of bacteria on large urban populations, and other experiments resulting in many deaths, suicides, and ruined lives. Again, we're not debating whether these are true or not.
Right. 3, just because I get into a lot of that with my mother-in-law, and I am not interested.
What do you mean? Is your mother into alternative ideas?
Yes, lots of them. Okay. And not that they're wrong. They're too much for me to put on my plate right now, and that's one of them.
Okay, well, I want to talk to you about that then, because that's
Okay.
the kind of statement that I'm really interested right there.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to that. We don't necessarily have to talk about these specific issues, but I'm going to make a note that this was
an idea.
a super good opportunity right there. Okay.
Okay.
21. Since the value of money has declined so much, we should raise the minimum wage to compensate.
1. 1/2. I mean,
1/2? Less
half
than
of
1?
that.
Oh, wow. You're breaking the scale. All right. 22. The people should know about everything the government does. Full transparency.
4?
Do you kind of feel good about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Most, kind of.
Okay.
Yeah.
23. Anarchists are violent sociopaths who want to see the world burn.
3.
3. Okay. Most people don't think too much about anarchists.
No.
Okay. 24. If you don't support mandatory public school, you hate education and the poor.
1. I hate that statement.
You did say you're homeschooling, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is starting to make sense. All right, 25 is the last one, and then we can actually
Better
just
be good.
start conversing.
Okay.
I always want to say conversating, but that's not a word. All right, 25. It is unlikely that a college degree will help you find work or make a living.
It's unlikely that it will help you.
Yep.
3.
3. Okay. Okay.
Well,
Oh,
I have feelings on that, but that statement is, I don't think it's necessarily true or necessarily false.
okay. Well, I want the
that-
feelings. What are your feelings?
I don't feel that a college degree is absolutely necessary to get anywhere. And in a lot of times it's often detrimental because the amount that you're going to spend on college now is going to take you so long to pay off, even if you get the job that degree is supposed to help you get. So to me, it makes more sense in most cases to start out maybe figuring out actually what you want to do by entering the workforce rather than jumping right into school and paying thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to figure out what you want to do. And then you get there and realize, I don't know that I really want to do that.
Okay. Do you have any personal experience with that makes it stoke any feelings for you, or is it just intellectually something you're aware of?
I just see a lot of my friends that and family also that they just jump into school because that's what you do, and they spend a whole lot of time switching degrees. You know, they're working or they're going to college for 6, 7, 8 years for a bachelor's degree in something, and they have this enormous amount of debt before they even get to what they want to do. In our family, Zach wanted to be a firefighter, and so we went to school for that. Tried to get a firefighting job and realized he didn't really love it. But what came along with that was emergency medicine. And so he got on an ambulance to just as a pathway to be a firefighter and realized that's what he really wanted to do. Oh. So we wasted so much time and money doing this firefighter thing when what he really wanted to do was work in an ER. And it turns out that a degree is actually necessary to be a nurse. And so it's not always bad because I want somebody who's taking care of me in the hospital to have a degree and to have some education. Not that that's the only thing that's important.
Yeah, that's something where it's hard to just kind of try it out a whole bunch of times until you figure it out. Like do surgery on a lot of people until you get good at it.
Right.
Yeah.
So to get anywhere in that field for him to make money, he's got to go back to college to get a degree. But I feel like we saved a lot more money having him jump into at a what do you call it? A starting.
Working in a similar job to start with so that he can get the experience.
Yeah, just getting, he's a tech in the ER and he wants to be a nurse and he's not making a lot of money being a tech, but at least he figured out that's what he wanted to do so he can go back to school and just, fly through and not do any nonsense and get to the degree he wants.
Okay. All right, and that's the kind of thing I kind of want to get into. I'm gonna start at the 0.5 rating that you gave because that seems pretty extreme. So we'll start with the most extreme and we'll move outward. But I want to get into these, and as I'm asking you questions, I really want the focus to be on the experience you're bringing to the issue.
Okay.
Not only experience directly with the issue. For example, when we talk about the 0.5, which was about the minimum wage, not just the experience you have having worked at minimum wage or the experience you have being an adult seeing the minimum wage be raised or, some direct way, but also if there are other factors in your past or in your experience that are bringing you to that 0.5 rating on that scale, I want to hear about that too. And we're not going to focus too much on whether it's actually good or bad to have a minimum wage. I'm happy to have you talk about that, but I'm not going to answer those questions for you.
Okay.
Or give my opinion about it, at least very much. So that's what all my videos where I'm talking by myself will be for. I'll be talking all about how I feel because those will be my personal outlet and my vent opportunity. And this is more for the audience to get the feel of how all this works in somebody's mind. Okay, so let's talk about this. Number 21, the 0.5 rating was, since the value of money has declined so much, we should raise the minimum wage to compensate. So explain why you gave it a 0.5.
Okay, I read somewhere or heard somewhere that the minimum wage was introduced to get rid of the lower class or to get rid of black people specifically. And since then, it has just created this cycle. You raise it and people make more money for a little bit, but then businesses just have to raise their cost. And it's the same cycle over and over, which you're seeing now in Seattle, I think, with all of the restaurants. They are supposed to get up to $15 an hour as a minimum wage. I think it's within the next 4 years. They're up to $11 and all the restaurants are closing. So would you rather have some money or no money by not having a job? It doesn't solve anything because the money has to come from somewhere. And I really, really hate it when people say, well, the rich CEOs can just take it out of their pocket and give it to their workers.
Why do you hate that? Are you a rich CEO?
No, because they are working for their money. And yes, they make a whole heck of a lot more than everybody else, but they're still going to work every day. Plus, they run a business that's giving everybody else a job. So it doesn't make any sense to say, you're making too much money, give that back to everybody else that you're employing and live like the rest of us, but keep doing the work that you're doing. You're just going to get paid less because everybody else thinks that's fair.
Okay. So why does that idea irk you? I mean, is it because it's like you sense some vice in the people saying it, like they're jealous, or like it's based on like envy or like some kind of disdain for everyone who has been successful, or why does that get you?
It bothers me that just because somebody else has something that you don't have, you have to tear them down. So it doesn't bother me in the slightest that people have more money than me. And it bothers me when people who are not as successful for whatever reason, they hate the people that are more successful just because they're more successful. It has nothing to do with, well, they might have worked really hard to get that way.
Or maybe they're taking more risk than somebody who's at the counter.
And even if they're born into it, if they inherited a lot of money, so what? It's not your life. Just deal with your own life and figure out how to make yourself better and improve your own situation without trying to tear somebody else down. And it's just not going to work to get rid of all the rich people because they're the ones providing everybody jobs. And sure, there's some that are greedy and, it's not like they're all really good people, but I don't like the whole idea of taking the rich down just so everybody can have a little bit more money. It's not going to make anybody happy. I kind of grew up with this in my own home. My dad, for some reason or another, I don't know if it's hatred or jealousy, he really does not like people with money. It frustrates him and makes him mad, probably because he has been a working man his entire life. He had 7 kids, and he never really had anything for himself.
Yeah.
He was a dairy farmer, so just always trying to get by his entire life. And he looks at people who are more successful with disdain almost. And that frustrates me because I don't feel like it's necessary. He's looking at all of the bad he's had in his life compared to all of the good somebody else has had in his life and totally neglecting what a good family he has and, the kind of life that he was able to give us even on what he had.
Okay. This 0.5 that we received, do you feel like that's a result? I mean, that your father's upbringing and his strong feelings as a result of his upbringing, and you're watching his feelings and hearing his feelings growing up, do you feel like that's the reason why you have not only the opinion you do about this issue, but the feelings about the issue that you do?
Well, part of it, because I feel like these people that are working at McDonald's, for example, and want to make $15 an hour, I don't for one second believe that they're going to be any more responsible with the $15 an hour than they are with the $10 an hour.
Okay.
I would appreciate if people were able to look at their own lives and say, I can cut out here, here, and here and live within my means, rather than just saying, I want more, I want more, I want more, I want everything else that everybody has. And I deserve that because I have a job.
Yeah.
But it's not, things are not guaranteed to you in life. You don't deserve everything that everybody else has just because you want it.
Yeah.
And I get into this with my mother-in-law every once in a while because as a mother of 7 herself, she found at some point that it was hard to feed her kids on one income, and so she went to get a job as a waitress, which was less than minimum wage,
Right.
because of tips. And she knew people that were working there that were trying to support a family. And most of her motivation for supporting the minimum wage is because these people she worked with have families and they need to be able to have the money to provide for their family. But a minimum wage is not a living wage. It's a starting wage for teenagers or people entering the workforce, where they can gain skills and then get better. You're not supposed to stay there. And I understand some people have to because they don't have any other choice. But it's not up to the rest of society to pay for one person to just stay where they're at because they can't or won't proceed in their life.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you telling me about sort of the background on how you feel about those things. That's what I'm trying to get into, and that I think that's really eye-opening, that there is some personal experience, even on a minimum wage issue, that that brings a certain perspective or feeling to that issue. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. I want to get back to, there's a little arrow I drew on my paper when we were first doing the statements, and I want to get back to that. It was on this question, which probably is easily the most crazy sounding statement on my list of statements. And it says, the U.S. government has given children LSD, sterilized mentally handicapped people against their will, given mental health patients involuntary shock therapy until their memory was gone, dropped clouds of bacteria on large urban populations, and other experiments resulting in many deaths, suicides, and ruined lives. So again, we're not going to talk about whether that's true or not, but when I read that, you said, well, that's a 3. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that it's a 3 because you didn't want to get into it because you've heard some of those things, but there's just too much on your plate to be bringing in that kind of stuff right now. And I want to have you elaborate on that a little bit now. What do you mean by there's too much on my plate to think about those things?
I would start by saying everybody says, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. Everybody has time for what you want to have time for. And I have plenty of time in my day to spend on things like this. Mm-hmm. The problem is, once you get started on stuff like this, for me, if you find out whether it's true or false, you keep digging. And it takes up so much mental energy and emotional energy and physical energy even sometimes that I can't really afford. Because with 3 kids and a husband who's working constantly and homeschooling and, running a house, I have to be mentally, emotionally, and physically available for my family. And these are things that are probably important, but they don't directly affect my life right now. Mm-hmm. And so I have to spend my energy on things that are currently happening to me or are going to affect my family right now.
Immediately, yeah. Would you say that those are feelings that probably most people share when it comes to issues like this, or is that something that maybe is just where you're coming from?
I think a lot of people have a lot of trust in the things that they're told, and if you just start in with the crazy, then they they just, you just push it away because that's too crazy to believe in. And so I think there's probably more people that they just don't want to believe that they're being lied to, or that they're not being told certain things. And because it's kind of scary. It takes away your sense of security a little bit.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Think about your government, who is supposed to be protecting you and having your best interest at heart, doing these things to its citizens, whether it's true or not.
Yeah.
It's a scary idea.
So it's kind of scary. And it's because, I mean, if scary things are true, how does that affect, what is it people are really scared of when it comes to learning heavy, dark, scary things that don't sound nice? Crazy things.
What are they scared of?
Yeah, how would that affect their life, or how would that change, their daily experience? Like, what are they really running from? Bad feelings?
Bad feelings, I think responsibility a little bit. Because if you find out that you are being lied to, or that these types of things are true, isn't it your responsibility to keep finding out what's true for yourself and to stop things like this from happening again? Because the only reason these kinds of things might happen is because people don't know about it, and you can cover it up and nobody cares because it's too scary. Okay. And nobody wants to know. So if people know these things are true, then I don't know where I'm going.
Then they have to do something.
You have to do something about it. And nobody wants to give up playing on Facebook and going to the swimming pool and, all these things that are...
So there's a perception that once you know a certain amount of things, secret things, dark, scary things, not only do you feel a responsibility to act on those things, because it's just the way we are. If we learn something that's true, we feel responsible to make a change, adapt to the new knowledge. And I think that's a good quality that humans have. But maybe there's a perception that you have to stop doing all positive things, like all the good things in your life are going to sort of fall by the wayside because they're meaningless compared to the heaviness of these huge truths. Maybe there's some fear that it's going to change everything for the worse, and suddenly, kind of like you were saying, you have a responsibility to your children, your husband. You spend a lot of time and a lot of emotional energy. I know how it is. I have kids too. It is very emotionally draining, and your attention is like very important at all times. And, there's a sense that if you learn about more stuff, like if you find out that the world isn't what you thought it was, then there's a certain amount of time and a certain amount of emotional energy you're going to have to suddenly dedicate to that topic for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Until it's resolved. And something else might be sacrificed. Good things might be sacrificed to accommodate that change. It sounds like maybe that's what you're saying.
I don't know about good things, but you're I don't know how to say it. You might have to give up the easy. Like it's easy to not know. And it's easy to not care. But if you care and you know, then like I said, you have to do something about it. And that means trying. And for a lot of people, trying anything new or venturing into new areas, it's scary because it takes effort and it takes courage to question things and to change your ideas. And yeah.
I think that's insightful, and it resonates with me. I know I said I wasn't going to give too much of my opinion, but here's just a little bit.
Can't resist.
What it also means often when it's hard to make an effort and go do something about it, along with that comes the fact that you probably have to go do something about it without any support.
Yes.
You have to go do something about it by yourself against the flowing stream of public opinion or the people around you that maybe they just don't get it and they won't understand why you're doing what you're doing. So it's not only difficult because you have to give up easy things, but you have to do it by yourself a lot of the time. So it is a scary thing, and that's what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me, and I agree. It resonates with my personal experience. So. So we have a minimum wage issue that had some connection to your personal experience, and that's terrific. And then this makes a lot of sense, what you're saying about your life, and I feel like you're being very honest about your family and how it would affect you, and why maybe now's not a good time for these kinds of issues. And honestly, if the government did drop clouds of bacteria on a large urban population, or to just as experiments, and it caused people to get sick and die, that's not priority one. Like if you're
No.
trying to learn things, that's not the most important central issue that you should spend your limited effort and time on. So
Right.
some of these things can be pretty peripheral, and it's not always critical. There are some things that aren't common knowledge, or they're not popular opinion, that are true, that are important to know about. But I wouldn't say that involuntary shock therapy is one of them necessarily.
Right, because if it's true, there's nothing I can do about it
Yeah.
right now.
Right.
And there are things that are conspiracies that are happening currently,
There are?
maybe, allegedly,
Yeah.
that I can
Are you involved in the conspiracy?
that I can do something about in relation to my own family. And
Right.
so there are some things that require my attention because I can do something about them, and participate or not in certain things. But these ones specifically, there's not much I can do about them, even if they're true. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Makes sense to me. All right, let's move on to another one. We've spent a good amount of time on those so far. Let's go to let's talk about the Constitution. I think based on past conversations, I've gathered that you value the Constitution.
Yes.
Is that true? So let's go there and talk a little bit about that. I had a statement that said the Constitution was written for the 1700s and needs to change with the times, and you said that's a very undesirable statement. That's a one. So tell me a little bit about why that evokes an emotional response in you.
From a religious point of view, I believe the founders were men of God, and they were inspired to create the country in the way that God wanted it to be created.
Okay.
I don't believe for a second that they could foresee everything that was going to happen, but I believe that they created a framework for us to figure out what they wanted. Like, for instance, this stupid natural born clause that's going around with this election cycle.
Okay.
There are different interpretations on it because people want different things now. But, like, for instance, some people want that to mean you have to be born in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But how many presidents did we have in the beginning that were not born in the United States?
I don't know.
I believe it was 7. Because they all came from somewhere else. So I believe that their intent was to natural born, meaning your parents have to have citizenship here.
So were all those presidents president and not born here because the country simply hadn't been around long enough for them to have been born?
Yeah, so it was impossible, really,
So
to make that statement.
Okay.
But further than that, we have had this issue several times,
Uh-huh.
and it's been debated endlessly. John McCain was not born in the United States.
Where was he born?
He was born in Panama.
Okay.
So nobody had this birther issue with John McCain for whatever reason. And so I don't know why it keeps coming up. There was I can't remember who it was before him. There was another one recently.
Barack Obama?
Not him. Like, legitimately, they were born outside of the United States. Their parents had a citizenship.
Verifiably.
Yes. I believe that the founders knew what they were doing when they wrote the Constitution, and we have been messing it up along the way to try to make it fit our times. I
Okay.
believe that was the mistake.
All right. So can Can you give me an idea of how this looks in terms of them being inspired? Was it unbeknownst to them that they were inspired, or were they religious men who were praying for inspiration and received it, and it was sort of like a revelation situation? Or, how does this look? How did that work in your mind?
I don't believe that it was the same type of things that would happen like the prophet and the apostles of the Mormon Church.
Okay.
I don't believe that they were, I don't think it was the same kind of process. However, I believe that they were deeply religious and they respected revelation in whatever form as being from God. And so I believe that they were I've never thought about it so specifically before.
Well, you're welcome. That's all right. I just wondered if you had if you had sort of an idea of, when I'm Benjamin Franklin and I'm sitting down at the table with my pen, or I'm in a room full of other guys and we're discussing this, to what degree did inspiration come to play? Was it that God had a design and he sort of sent it their way and inspired them with the right ideas and they thought, we're just doing our best, but it turns out this is actually God helping us, or anyway, if you don't know, who does really? But right. I just wonder how that would look if you were standing there back then.
I guess it feels more like, because the times that they lived in were vastly different than they are now. Yeah. But I feel like maybe they had inspiration as to what needed to be included for future situations that they weren't maybe necessarily experiencing. Maybe they didn't make sense to them.
Stuff they didn't write in there, but they acted with intent based on those things.
Well, maybe, to be fair, I haven't read the Constitution from front to back.
Well, that'd be excellent.
Because it's kind of hard to understand for me.
Yeah, it's boring if you just read it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so a lot of my opinion just comes based on the fact that I trust what they were and them as men of God and the document itself, rather than knowing because I've read the words. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Instead of having having a belief based on point by point, agreeing with each thing as they wrote it, and feeling the text itself, or feeling based on your own experience reading it that text was inspired. You're trusting the nature of the guys who wrote it as the source of the Constitution. That's that helps you to feel that it's something special that should be protected.
Yes.
Okay. And how do you feel about the amendments that have been added since the original draft of the Bill of Rights, for example?
I can't say that I even know what they are.
Okay. So the reason I ask is just to get an idea of, if this was beautiful in its original form and it's been changed, in a big official way, some people would say, they provided for amending. There is, there's an article in there where you're allowed to amend the Constitution in the event that, the country agrees that there are appropriate changes based on new circumstances or, the changing of the times. So I just wonder, because the statement is that it needs to be changed with the times, which is what the amendments provide for. And the original, you did say that maybe they had some idea of what would come later. Anyway, so I just wanted to get an idea of, do you feel that the process of amending in general, without knowing specifically what those were, it doesn't really matter, but do you feel like if it were to be amended again, would you have good feelings about that, or would you be resistant to that, or how would that go?
As long as it was done in the way provided.
Okay.
That's what I mean when I say it seems like maybe they didn't know exactly what was coming, but they were able to. I mean, they were able to write in there that we could change it with amendments because they didn't know, it seems like, everything that was to come.
Right.
But they recognized that things were probably going to get out of control, and the citizens needed a way to, fix things. And as difficult as it is, I think that if it was if we were able to amend it the right way, I feel like that'd be
all right.
That'd be all right.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So to sum up that one, it sounds like as far as the feeling that you have about it, it really comes back to religious beliefs and teachings that the founders had some degree of inspiration and guidance from God, and that gives the entire process, like the result of that inspiration is the Constitution, and that gives it some sacredness and some some higher value than simply a piece of paper with some laws.
Yes.
Okay. All right, that makes sense to me. Thanks. So let's maybe we should do a 5. We've done all 1s and 0.5, so let's do a 5. There was only 1 5. 1 5. So the 1 5 is number 14, which was politicians are mostly corrupt, dishonest, and self-serving. So how do you know? How do you know that? If somebody lies to you, how do you know they're lying?
And I said 5 because I agreed with that statement, right? Not because that was a positive feeling about that.
Yeah, that was because you were like, yes, they are corrupt, dishonest,
true.
and self-serving.
Okay. So it seems like before they were politicians, they were probably good people. Not to say that.
That implies that they're not good people now, Heather.
Well, some of them aren't.
Harsh.
Okay, and so you get they get elected, maybe with good intentions, and somehow when they get to Washington, after a while, they just start playing this game, and they practically live in Washington. They have their homes wherever they came from, but they spend so much time there creating laws and doing whatever they do there, they lose touch with what else is going on where they came from.
Regular people's lives.
Regular people's lives like mine. And so their interest becomes what they're getting out of it or what makes sense to them because they're no longer connected to their constituents.
Okay.
And so they can be swayed by lobbyists and other interests because that directly affects their life. They don't have to live the same life that we do, the lives that they're affecting, because they can just say, well, that's for them to live, not me. I make the laws, but I don't have to live by them.
So that's the self-serving part where they suddenly start realizing that, oh, wait a second, I can get my stuff, my money and my stuff from my position instead of from work.
Right.
And so they have a personal interest that maybe trumps in their priorities yours and their constituencies. Okay. All right. And do you have strong feelings about that, or is that just something you're aware of? And
this is another one of those. It does directly affect me because they're the ones controlling a lot of what's going on, but there's not a whole lot I can do about it.
Okay. You did say that you were a delegate.
Yes.
And so you've participated somewhat in the electoral process. And
yes.
I want to get into that a little bit because I think that not only does it tie into what we're talking about with the politicians, because clearly, well, maybe not clearly, it seems like if you were a delegate and you went and you participated and maybe you went to the convention and, you voted, that indicates that you have some belief that the process can work. Or that your participation can make a difference. Is that right?
Kind of.
Okay. Well, tell us about why you did it and what attitude you had about that going in and if that was different coming out.
I did it because I mostly wanted to see how it worked.
Okay.
To see... Because going into it, I didn't even know that some of those positions existed. I had zero knowledge on county politics. And so I wanted to just kind of start with this bottom-up thing rather than starting with national politics and trying to figure out how that was gonna, how I could change that to make my life better.
Kind of start small.
Yes, I'll start at the county level and see if there's any change there to be made. And it's difficult to feel, even on that small of a scale, that much difference is going to be made. For example, the year that I did it, there were 2 county commissioners up for election.
Okay.
And one of them who did get elected, he seemed so solid. He looked you straight in the eye and told me everything that I wanted to hear.
Okay.
He seemed great. And, I don't have a lot of experience with people lying to my face generally, but it seemed like he was a pretty good guy. And I know that things aren't perfect for everybody. But it seemed like, he's, we can get him in. That'll be great. And then you find out later he's a total dirtbag.
Oh, really?
And it's frustrating to feel like you could have faith in somebody, like looking them in the eye and discussing these things and have them say just what you want to hear, and you can't even pick up on it, and you give them this position of power where they can do now whatever they want to because they're not accountable for however many years.
Yeah, they're set, yeah.
And then by then, everybody's just forgotten about it. So I feel like in an ideal world, the system could work. I don't have a whole lot of faith that it does work because there's too many moving pieces, it feels like.
Okay.
There's too much involved.
I think that's I think that this is valuable because for the listeners, this is an educated opinion, right? So there's a lot of people who just watch the news and they say, oh, the election process is what makes this country great and it works. Or they say it's a bunch of garbage and it never, no. But Heather's actually been in it, you know? So this to me is valuable because if you've been there and you've seen this and you've had personal face-to-face experience with politicians and the electoral process, I think that carries a lot more weight in terms of, the value of that experience. So I appreciate that. And I also been a delegate, and I've also did it so that I could see how things work. And I recommend that to anybody to go, and even if you think it's a bunch of baloney, like go see for yourself because it is interesting. Not only the system, not only the mechanics of it, but the behavior of the people involved. I think it's really interesting. So I want to take it to a different level. So we're talking about this process. Oh, I also wanted to make this point. You said that in a perfect world, this could work. And I was thinking, where else have I heard that? And I've heard that talking to, anytime you're talking about communism, people are like, in a perfect world, if everybody was good, that would work fine. And then if you talk about anarchy where there's no government, oh, well, that can't work unless everyone's perfect. In an ideal world, that would be great. And so usually our system is what comes out as sort of a, this is the best we can, this is the best we've got right now. And this is what we're going to use as sort of a middle ground that's not as bad as anarchy and not as bad as communism, because not everybody's perfect, but this system, it's the best when everybody's not perfect. But you just said this system could work, like the electoral system could work if everybody was perfect. And I think it's interesting to note that even...
Well, not if everybody was perfect, but if
there
was
world.
more involvement, yeah.
Okay.
If everybody was ideally involved.
Yeah, in the ideal world, I would be able to fly and shoot fireballs and have big muscles, but this is not the ideal world.
You can't?
No, not yet. I'm working on it. So anyway, I just wanted to make that note so that we know that even in this not ideal world, well, that doesn't make sense. So that in the world we live in, even in the system that we live in, we're still hoping for an ideal world for a day when it works the way that we want it to work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I want to take it to another level. Like I said before, I want to take this from this sort of this low level where we're discussing particulars. How this guy that I got into office, and these are like details, minutia of the system we live in. I want to take this all the way to the high level where we're like flying in an airplane looking from way up there at the ground and everyone looks like ants. This is the level that we're looking at now. So, Heather, what is the purpose of government in general? Why do we have to have government? While you think about that, this is a question that I think that a lot of people don't ever consider.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you have on some level. But I think a lot of people don't, because you're born into a world where there is not an inch of land that is not owned by a government.
Right.
Or controlled by a government, I guess would be more accurate. And so when you're born into a system, you're born into a world as it is, that's what you expect. You don't
It's like your ground zero.
Yeah.
Everything moves from there.
Yeah, and it's really hard to imagine something different. So anyway, this is sort of an opportunity to maybe get the perspective that you bring, which might be the same as a lot of other people who've never given it. I mean, maybe they've thought a little bit, but not too much about what would happen if the government just disappeared tomorrow. Anyway, go ahead. What is it for? Why do we have it in the first place?
At its base, it feels like it should just be protection of our God-given rights, which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Okay.
But I think that can even be taken to somewhere where it's not supposed to be. Like,
what do you mean?
Like with gun control, for example.
Okay.
Some people would say they're protecting our lives by controlling, by taking guns away. They're protecting our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a function of the government, or that shouldn't be. A function of the government is regulating things like that. Pursuit of happiness doesn't mean you get to go to college for free to figure out what makes you happy.
Okay.
That's not a function of the government. And I think the government is there to provide protection from, are you speaking of national government?
Yeah, so, and I'm not even talking,
government.
not even necessarily the U.S. government, so.
Any kind of government.
Yeah, what is the government of Zambia supposed to do for the Zambians?
I think
Zambians, I guess.
Protecting from outside forces, other countries that would try to harm our citizens, is a function of the government.
It's a pretty small list.
It's really to get out of the way. There has to be. There's very few things that I can think of that they should be involved in. Okay. That they are involved in.
What about bad people in the country?
Inside the country?
Yeah, like what about somebody robbing the convenience store down the road? Is it necessary for government to take care of that, or is there some other way?
To protect us from, or are you speaking of the justice system?
The justice system, because I don't think there's really anything. I mean, you're not going to have like armed guards at all convenience stores, right? So, unless the convenience store is paying for that. So
yeah, you're right. The justice system needs to be some kind of protection in that way. I mean, I guess I would put that in the protecting life category, because if criminals are allowed to just do whatever they want as long as it's inside the country, then that doesn't protect anybody. But in enforcing the laws that should be there,
All right. So
They're doing.
so let's look at this a little bit. Let's see. Well, before we go there, what would happen if the government did just disappear tomorrow? What would be the
Completely?
completely no government whatsoever? Absolutely no government, absolutely no taxes, absolutely no police, absolutely no
In
nothing.
the world?
Yeah.
Okay.
Including on a local level. What would happen, do you think? It's kind of a big question.
Almost sounds so great.
That's like a 4 for you?
Well, like you said, this is not a perfect world. And so, yes, in a perfect world, we could live without a government.
Yeah.
But it feels like there needs to be some kind of... I keep wanting to say regulatory, but I don't like that word at all. It just comes to me because that's what we're taught that government does, is regulate. I think if all government was to disappear, I think for most people, life would just keep going on as it does. I think that there's a lot of good in the world, and I think
Okay.
that would kind of spread. Like, we would help each other more in our communities. We would, like, nobody wants people to be on welfare. But the people that are truly in need, they need help. And I don't believe that the good in people would let those people suffer.
Okay.
There are going to be the ones that, they're going to have to get a job. But the truly poor and the truly needy, everybody else is going to, just step up and help those people. And we're going to, I feel like, and maybe this is just because I live in small town Santaquin, where, everybody is generally good. I feel like the good would just kind of kick in and everybody would keep living the basic, human laws that exist, and decency would kind of prevail.
Okay.
There's going to be exceptions, obviously, but
Yeah, and you gave an answer to one of the statements, which was things that are legal are right and things that are illegal are wrong. You gave a 1. You disagreed, or you felt bad about that statement. And that's kind of, it sounds like along the lines of what you're saying, is that people have a moral code outside of the law.
yes.
People have a sense of right and wrong despite the law.
Yes.
And sometimes they can conflict, sometimes they don't conflict, sometimes they're the same. And I think it's not only remarkable but commendable what you're saying, because not only is it different than I think a lot of people's perspective or would answer this question, but what you're saying is that people are basically good. And I think that, especially for the listeners who haven't explored this concept, if you go back to the 17 and 1800s and read some of the literature that the founders were reading and writing, this idea is really the basis of the liberal and the conservative movements. And it also trickles into, libertarianism and some other ideologies. But would you consider yourself a conservative?
Yes.
I could tell you that even if we hadn't had any of the rest of this conversation and we just heard you say that most people would just go on living and they would probably take care of people who are needy, and their basic intrinsic good would probably make things all right with a few exceptions.
Yes.
I could tell you just from that you're a conservative. And the reason is that trust in the government comes from a belief. It's directly proportional to your belief that people are evil. If you believe that people are generally evil and that they have ill motives, you're naturally going to feel a greater need for an authoritarian institution that can keep them in check. The more that you believe that people are basically good, the more you'll feel that the government should kind of stay out of things and that people can take care of themselves. And if there are bad elements in society, then we will take care of that. Or that we'll hire someone to, go investigate a crime or, that kind of thing.
Right.
So for the listeners, that's a really interesting concept. And I want if you want some homework from this this interview, I want it to be that you go and you learn more about the idea and all of the consequences of the ideas. People are basically good or people are basically evil. If you just Google those words, stuff will come up. Book names will be suggested and highlighted, and just go find them, check them out, buy them on Amazon. This is important information. And I really appreciate you coming, Heather. And I think that, this would be a great place for us to bring it to a close, because I think that this point has enough value, and that, you brought out in what you were saying. And I think that it's important enough that if we stop there and we go and we learn more about this specific thing, these foundational principles of what is government for, and what are the underlying ideas? Why do I believe that the minimum wage is bad? Whether it's an Enlightenment idea in a book from the 1700s, or it's your personal experience where something happened in your life that gave you feelings about an issue that might be greater than the next person because they didn't have the same experience. If you can understand these basic underlying ideas, motivations, and the reasons for sort of what you believe, and maybe why it bothers you so much when people say certain things, it can really open things up for you and bring you to a place. And I think that this approach, as opposed to dumping a bunch of conspiracy ideas on yourself, does the exact opposite. So that can really bring you down, and it can distract you from more important things. But really understanding yourself and where you're coming from, why you think what you do, and why you do the things you do, it can have the same eye-opening effect without that heaviness and without that distraction, and it can actually be calming.
Right.
Maybe if you hadn't thought, I mean, probably you have, but maybe if you hadn't thought yet about why minimum wage is such a heavy issue for you, and now you have, next time somebody confronts you with that, you'll be like, hey, I know that I'm just mad about this because my dad had an issue with rich people. And so I don't need to take that out on this person on Facebook, but I can listen to what they're saying with open ears, and I can be a little more patient, and because I'm confident with where I stand, and I know why I believe what I do.
Right.
And then you can hear what they have to say and consider it without feeling threatened. So, for you, Heather, and for the listeners, and for me, this is important. And I encourage you to try to practice it in your life a little bit. Ask yourself questions on a piece of paper like this if you have to. Why are you so passionately involved in politics? These are things I probably should have asked Gunnar when I interviewed him the other day. Why are you doing what you're doing? But I'm working on this, and I'm going to get better at it, and I'm going to try and bring more introspective ideas and truth your way, and some interesting perspectives from people like you, so that we can all get to know ourselves better. So thanks for coming, Heather.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And join me next time. We're going to have another interview next week on Tuesday, and maybe a couple in the interim. I have a few people lined up, and I'll also be presenting another topic by myself about government in more depth, and what it looks like from top to bottom in a principled sort of ideological way. So subscribe, follow, download, and join me next time, and we'll talk to you then. All right, bye-bye.